Good afternoon, church. Before I preach, I want to share a couple of things. The first has to do with some of you have been asking how I have been doing. I want to tell you that as far as my health is concerned, there's nothing much they can do to intervene. So I am short of getting a bone marrow transplant. I'm just trusting God to get better. So I am feeling better, but my energy level is not exactly the same. However, I'm not about to roll over and do nothing. So I'm still accepting the opportunities to preach every Sunday. And by the time I get to the afternoon, if I preach once or twice in the morning, I get quite tired. So since I don't have a day off on Monday, I take my day off on Sunday afternoon. So that's the reason why I have not been appearing in church. But I do try to join in the Zoom. Now, I realize that there are some of you who are still Zooming, even though it's now opening up. I hope you'll come back to church. I think if I can preach on Sunday in one or two other churches and try to Zoom in, you don't have an excuse not to come to church. So please come back because the church needs you. We need, it's nothing like meeting each other, seeing each other, and then, having this personal eyeballing and knowing that we're all, growing in the Lord together. So please don't abstain yourself when it's all open up. I'm hoping to be able to come when I'm not preaching on a Sunday morning so I can also see you. The second thing is about the book. I want to tell you that this book, one of our own church members have a lot to do with it. Serene Leong, I don't know whether Serene Leong is here. Is Serene here? Hi, Serene. Not here. So I must go and tell Serene to come back to church also. Yeah. Anyway, Serene is on the SKM team, and she was in charge of Kindness at Work. And so this book is actually, the heavy lifting was done by her. She did a lot of research and did most of the first draft. So I thought if she's here, she could also sign on the introduction page because she writes the introduction for the book. But anyway, she's not here. Okay. Well, suffering. We know that the people are suffering. People in Africa are suffering. Apparently, UN has announced that many people will die of hunger. Millions will die of hunger. Because of climate change, the land has become unfertile, and it's been difficult for them to make a living. Yemen, Syria, Myanmar, and of course Ukraine. We hear a lot more about Ukraine because it's a Western country, the news have been a bit more biased in projecting Ukraine in our face. But Ukraine is not the only place, as our sister Deacon prayed just now, not the only place in the world having a war. And when we think of that, I can't imagine what it is like to be in a war situation. I reflected on it recently because of the fact that I have friends who have passed away. In fact, one particular week was a bad one just recently, when in 4 days I lost 4 friends, one a day. People do die, and some suffered before they die. And I was reflecting on the Ukraine as well and the other countries, and then the death of my friends, and I realized, number one, how short life really is. And, my last book about living well and leaving well is about having a expiry date in mind, that we all will have to reach there, however young we are. We age every day. We age, I often say, after you leave this church, you age by another hour or 2. There is nothing we can stop the aging process. So let us look at the end in view. How then shall we live? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? What you want to be known for when you're gone? Second, I also realize that wealth and material possession can be lost in the twinkling of an eye. There are many rich Ukrainians, there are many rich Russians whose money is suddenly either they are unable to take them out or they have depreciated. And somehow the wealthy are also have also ended up as refugees. It can happen. It can happen in the 21st century. Nothing is secure on earth. Everything is temporary. So let us hold our wealth and our possession, with a very open hand, open palm. We don't really own them. It can be taken away anytime. And then finally, I also realized that suffering is a part of life. We all will have to suffer in one form or another. And that's why it is so important to be kind to people, because when you look at people, we think that they are angry, they are unkind, and they may look like unfriendly and so on. Some may have mental issues, and they're grappling with their mental issues. I hear a lot more people committing suicide without even us knowing. My doctor friend was spending some time with us last night. He spends almost every Saturday night with us, staying over, sharing about one of his patients who just committed suicide. A very wealthy person, but couldn't handle the bipolarity of his mental state, and so on. And so people do have burdens to carry that we know nothing about. And people have other concerns. They have family issues. They have all kinds of work problems, and we don't know. So let's be kind to them, because a smile, how do you do, how are you doing, all that can help make life better for people. So whatever is within our power, let us be kind. These days, I try to listen to my Bible every morning by also what I call double tasking. So I'm trying to walk like 10,000 steps every morning, ranging from 1 hour to 1.5 hours, 2 hours, whatever it is. I walk very early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And as I walk 10,000 steps a day, I realize that strength and health is being developed even as I walk. And I'm not conscious of it. All I know is that after the walk, I may feel a little bit tired, and I may feel like, my legs are a bit tired. But that is nothing compared to the sufferings that people face. So this kind of fatigue is not really a suffering. But in a sense, it can be a bit painful sometimes. And then I realized that it is not something that I do forever. I don't walk 20 hours or 200 hours at one shot. I know that 1 hour will pass, 1.5 hours will pass. In other words, there will be an end in sight. And then I can get home and drink my, power shake. I can get home and have my breakfast. I can get home and have my warm shower. Then I can feel good again. So there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And this is what James is saying. All the suffering that you're going through, you need to be patient, because there is an end in sight. Because the Lord is coming, verse 1. We are always moving towards the end times. And what is the end times? The end time is when the Lord returns. And the Lord is going to come back. Until the Lord's coming is near. That is going to be the end of our earthly life. And whatever suffering, whatever crosses, whatever burdens we carry, because the Lord is coming. And they give the example of the farmer who works and waits according to the season. The season of his coming is as sure as spring will follow winter, and harvest time will come soon enough. So we take courage. And this is what I call motivation. The motivation for having patience. Verse 7 to 9. Motivation. How are we motivated? We should be motivated for something much bigger than whatever this life offers. The motivation of having eternal life with God. Somebody asked me, what is heaven like? I say, if you can think of one happiest moment in your life, the most blissful moment in your life, whatever that may be. Maybe when you have your first baby, or maybe when you graduated and you're walking on the seventh heaven, or you just got promoted, or whatever it is, and you freeze that happiest moment, and you multiply that by infinity, that is happiness. It's very hard to imagine, right? It's impossible to imagine because it is just too big a thing. But that is what we should be looking for. We should be motivated to get there so that our happiness could be multiplied by infinity. So we look beyond the present suffering and the injustices in the world. Some of us are feeling very grieved about the injustice that we see in some of the wars that are going on. And sometimes we waste our time trying to take sides and trying to be judgmental. And there are some people who are preaching and talking about God's judgment on certain nations. Let's not play God. We can't really say that. In fact, we come to look at the problem of Job. His friends were telling him, you are suffering because you must have sinned against God. It is God's judgment. That's what his friends were telling him. And Job was most amazed. Job said, I'm trying to live my life righteously. And the Bible says Job was a righteous man. We'll see more about Job later on. But unless God has spoken to you directly and told you that this is my judgment on this particular country, don't go around and think that it is. It is just not a good thing to do. But what we should be doing is to pray for them and empathize with them, because innocent people are in fact suffering. Children are dead in any war, we know. So we must be concerned that these people will find solace and comfort in God, hopefully. Well, the other point I want to make is that as our deaconess prayed just now, sometimes evil people seem to get away with things. Where is judgment? There is no judgment in its truest, purest sense on earth. When I informed the judge that I did my last case before I left my law practice, of course, many of our judges are our friends, and he invited me to the chamber after the case, and he told me, I envy you because you can retire. And as we chatted along, he's a devout Muslim, and he told me, you know what, a lot of people believe in judgment, and they think that, I'm a judge, that I will mete out justice. I mean, I try and do my best, but I'm not God, he says. There are many things we don't know. We only listen to the witnesses, and we make our decision based on what we see and what we hear. But God only knows the truth. And ultimate justice is up there. And he says what we are trying to do on earth is to try to manage law and order. I think it makes sense. Law and order is a semblance of justice. But real justice is going to be the ultimate God who will come and judge the world. And that's why I believe in God. I believe in God, and this is the moral argument for the existence of God. That if there is no God, there is no ultimate justice. All of us who's got might, who's got political power, who's got money, can get away with murder. As long as we can get away with it, we think that, there is no justice, that nobody's going to be able to catch us. But don't be fooled. God will catch us. And therefore, if we don't believe in the ultimate justice, then there is no God. If we do, there must be a God. And the final word has not been written yet. So James 5:7, we are told to slow down and be patient. Don't get in a hurry and try to let God do his thing. God who is working behind the scenes, God is faithful, God is doing his work even when we are suffering. Even when Job was suffering, even when the people is suffering, we do not always understand. But the judge is standing at the door, James says. And this is where we realize that ultimate justice, where there is no wrong information, where there is no misinformation, where there is no disinformation, where there is no blackout information, because only God knows the truth, and he knows everything about what is true and what is false. He will bring about ultimate justice. Every heartache will be removed, every fear will be eliminated, every tear dried, every sickness healed. There will be no more refugees, no more having to live in the bunkers, no more burying the babies and the innocent. there will be eternal happiness. Hate will be overwhelmed by eternal love. Rejection will be trumped by intimacy with our God. Evil will be straightened out by God's holiness. And we will dwell in paradise with Jesus and with those who are his followers. And all wrongs will be righted. And so we walk our 10,000 miles, knowing that at the end of the day, we will see God. The second thing I want to talk about is from verse 10 to 11, is the moments that we need to be patient. Moments of suffering. Brothers and sisters, verse 10, James says, an example of patience in the face of suffering. Take the prophets. Look at the prophets, he said. Those are moments of suffering. Look at Job. Those are moments of suffering. When should I be patient? James mentions 3 specific times to be patient. When these 3 things occur, you are going to want to try to take control. You and I and many of us are control freaks who are so used to having everything planned to the T, everything planned so that we have our retirement all set up. We have all our savings, we have all our everything done, and we think that we are in control. Well, the truth is that many people did that in Ukraine. Maybe they had plans for their future, and then it didn't happen. Frankly, we are really not in control. We need to let God be in control. We need to plan, yes. We need to be wise, yes. We need to be good stewards, yes. We need to work hard, of course. But ultimately, we must always remember that only God is in control. If we are trying to control everything, we will end up being frustrated, angry, bitter, worn out. And so, let God take control. And then we learn to be patient. There are 3 moments where we need to be patient. First, there is a moment of uncontrollable prospects or uncontrollable circumstances. Second, there will be unbelieving people. And thirdly, there will be unsolvable problems. Unsolvable problems. First, uncontrollable prospects. Well, there are many circumstances or prospects that are uncontrollable. There are many variable factors in life. In our economy, there are many variable factors. The strength of our economy, the strength of our nation, the ability of the 4Gs and anybody else who try to govern us, there are many variable factors. There are some things that we and they can control in life, and there are some things that we cannot control. To help us with this, James uses a farmer as an example. And the farmer can control the tilling, the harvest. Well, I won't say the harvesting. Harvesting comes much later. But tilling of the soil, the watering of the soil. Even that, the farmer doesn't always have control, because if there is drought, there is not enough water, the land is dry, you can do very little about it. And with climate change, they have found that so many things cannot be controlled. So what James says by way of example today is even more poignant, because this is happening right now. And but even if they can control, there's nothing to actually control how the harvest is going to be. So you can wait till the harvest time. So you have to be patient. When harvest time comes, and we have read in some of the realities of, for example, the late 1920s, the Great Depression, when there was so much drought and the land was dry and locusts were eating up the land in America, the Dust Bowl. And many harvests were all eaten up by the locusts at the time of the harvest. So it's gone. It's not controllable. So we wait patiently because God is in control. So the farmer reminds us to be patient because there are always circumstances and prospects that are not within our control. There are things in our life that we have no control over, and we just need to trust God and believe that He will make things good. Wars. Can we really control a war? We can try. We can build up our defenses. And hopefully we can send strong messages out to the world and try to deter them by trying to be funny. But can we control madmen who wants to bomb us out of existence? Sickness. Do we have control over sicknesses? I lost 4 friends. One of them who had a stroke, a lawyer, 53 years old. I work with her because I'm the advisor to the Law Society's publication committee. She used to chair that committee. I think some of you lawyers will know her. She was in the papers, Malathi. And she's not a Christian, so I reached out to her, and she welcomed me to talk to her every Monday. Every Monday at 10 o'clock, I talk to her. And I talk to her, encourage her, talk to her about God, read to her from my books, read to her from the Bible. And she welcomed that, and she found it very helpful. The Monday when she fell and became unconscious, I texted her at 7:30 a.m. because our talking time was 10 o'clock. But that morning, I had something on at 10 o'clock. I told her we have to take a rain check, and I will call her back later on in the day. I didn't hear from her, which was very strange. And then at about noon, the Law Society informed me that she was in a coma. And of course, the next day, she passed away. Who's got control over that? No one. We were planning to chat as per normal, and she's gone. So economic downturns, people have lost a shirt on their back in their investment from time to time. Any control? Control. It's better for us to be humble and stand before God and every day trust Him to take control of everything that we have no control of, and try to be a little God ourselves, because we would be very disappointed. The second moment is unbelieving people. Christians will always be a minority. In fact, I think there is some danger about the triumphalism of Christianity, where we think that somehow we are going to be the majority. We're not going to be a majority. We'll always be a minority. That we will always be surrounded by people who do not believe. And the question for us is always not about judging people who do not believe. It's about how do we reach out to people who do not believe, live our life that has got such a great influence and impact on them that they want to be our friends. And they want to talk to us, and they want to get our advice. And so that we can then bring the wisdom of God to them in such a way that hopefully one day they will also find God because of us. And that's what it means to be a witness. And so we need to be patient when circumstances are uncontrollable and when people are unchangeable. We try to change them, we try to make them Christians. There's no way we can. Only God can. We can only live out our life that is so positive and so winsome and so meaningful that they begin to question their own life. They want to have something that we have, that they don't have. I was just having breakfast 2 days ago with another group of partners in my work at Kindness Movement. And this one chap says, I envy all of you who believe you have peace and you can sleep well. I'm not having peace, I'm struggling. And yet, he said, I remain an agnostic. I said, it's very funny. I said, you are a really funny chap. I said, you know what you want, and you have seen what others have, and that's what you want. And yet you don't want to believe in the God that they believe in. You want to be agnostic. I don't understand you. Do you? You see. So sometimes our brains play trick on us. He's a very bright person. He can tell me that he wants the kind of things that we have. He envies the kind of peace that we have. And he doesn't want the God that we have. So I still got to work on him. But the point is that we don't convert people overnight. In fact, we don't even convert people. We are just there to facilitate conversation about God, about faith, about eternal life, and then let God work through us on them. We don't control them. We can't change them. Sometimes we live in a situation where, because of our faith, there are people who do not believe. They will laugh at us. They will make fun of us. Sometimes they will even make life difficult for us. And in some countries, they even persecute those who believe. And this is where James talks about the prophets. They look at the prophets. Look at the example of suffering. For verse 10, the examples of patience and suffering, dear brothers and sisters. Look at the prophets, he said, who spoke in the name of the Lord. Hebrews 11. We have a very interesting account of the prophets. And let me read to you what happened to them. Verse 35. Others were tortured and refused to be released, so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, they were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. We haven't seen any of that, have we? Talking about suffering, nothing like what the prophets went through. But brothers and sisters, sometimes we are so spoiled that when we have a little problem, a little sickness, a little suffering, a little loss of income, a little inconvenience, we think that it's great suffering and we blame God. And sometimes we even don't believe in God because of that. We ain't seen nothing yet, as the Americans would say. Look at the prophets. And some of these things are happening to people in some countries, in some totalitarian countries where believing in Jesus will send you to jail right away. And there are still many prisoners of conscience because they believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. But the prophets are also human. That is for sure. The prophets are human. Let me read to you from Jeremiah, the great prophet. And Jeremiah was a mighty prophet. But the suffering was so great that in Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 7, Jeremiah complained to God, "O Lord, you deceived me, and I was deceived. You overpowered me and prevailed. I am ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. When I cried out and proclaiming violence and destruction, so that the word of the Lord has brought me insult and reproach all day long." In other words, I preach the word, and what do I get? I get all kinds of things thrown at me. And became so painful for him that in verse 15, Jeremiah said, "Cursed be the man who brought my father the news, who made him very glad, saying, 'A child is born to you, a son.' May that man be like the towns of the Lord overthrew without pity. May he hear wailing in the morning, a battle cry at noon. For he did not kill me in the womb, with my mother as my grave, her womb enlarged forever. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow and to end my days in shame?" So you think prophets are holy men and they are completely spiritual, that they never had any depression? They never questioned God? They never asked God, "Why me?" Of course they did. Because they suffered greatly. And there are many people today in Ukraine who are believers, in Syria who are believers, in Myanmar who are believers, in the African continent, Hungary, suffering who are believers, and they're asking the same question, "Why me? Cursed be the day that I was born." Yet God is saying to the prophets, be patient. And Hebrews 11 is an example of how the patience of the prophets eventually bore fruit. God was able to deliver them. But they went through a lot of suffering before they were delivered. So when we are confronted with unbelieving people who cause us a lot of trouble, whether it's at work and whatever it is, be patient. God hears our prayer. God hears our pain. God understands. When we feel devalued, when we feel unappreciated by those who are against us, and it's not easy to be patient. But think of the patience of the prophets. And think of them who are just like us. Don't give yourself an excuse and say, oh, the prophets are special people so they can take it. But we are not special so we don't have to take it. That's not true. I just read to you from Jeremiah. He's like us. He had to take it. God finally blessed him. So that's about, unbelieving people. We have no control over them as well. Finally, there's an unsolvable problem. And this is where we come to Job. Those of you who have been reading Job, you understand that Job went through a lot of problems. Job was a man who actually gave, we read here in verse 11, we give great honor to those who endure under suffering. For instance, you know about Job, a man of great endurance. Job was a man of great endurance. Actually, Job was a man of great faith, a righteous man also, according to Job in the Bible. Well, it begins with the conversation between God and the devil. Job does not know anything about what transpired in that conversation. God asked Satan, what have you been up to? And Satan says, well, I've been watching, what's happening on the earth. Then God brings up Job and say, have you noticed my servant Job? And Satan says, oh yes, but the only reason he's one of your servants and worshiping you is because you make everything good for him. You give him everything he asks for. You are so nice to him. He says, listen, if you take away everything from him, he's going to curse you. What do you think? So God had a little deal with Satan. Say, well, I tell you what. I give you permission. You go and do whatever you want with Job. And let's see. So the next scene opens with a messenger arriving to tell Job that some people have taken all his oxen, all the donkeys, and killed his servants who were taking care of them. Chapter 1, verse 15. Bad news. And almost immediately a second messenger comes along and tells Job that a fire from the sky has consumed all the rest of his sheep and the servants that were watching them. Whoa. Double whammy. And that's not enough. The third messenger came and tells Job that some other people have taken all his camels and executed his servants who were watching them. Then finally, the ultimate stroke came. The messenger shows up and tells Job that all his children are dead. They were killed when the house caught fire and fell on all of them. So, in the twinkling of an eye, Job, the righteous man, lost everything. Lost everything. Business, his livestock, his family. But the worst suffering was yet to come. He also broke out in boils, painful boils all over him. So much so that even his wife said to him, you curse God and die. But he wouldn't do that. Well, up to that point, let's see what Job has to say. Very interestingly, let me see Job chapter 1. Job actually says, and then he says, after all that suffering, he says, let me read to you. He says, Job got up, verse 20 of chapter 1. He tore his robe, shaved his head, fell down on the ground, cursed God? No. fell down on the ground and worshipped. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, verse 22, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Then you say, see, I told you, Job is not like us, right? He's so special. I'm not like Job. I suffer, I complain, I want to blame God. But of course, Job is special. Wait a minute. That is only the beginning of Job's suffering. If you turn to chapter 10, then you see that Job is no better than Jeremiah. Job chapter 10, it starts with Job saying, I loathe my very life. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out in the bitterness of my soul. You change. You see, that's what I like about the Bible. The Bible is not about, holding up people, so special that we can't even touch them. They are special people with halos on their head every day. The Bible is about actually very ordinary people who share the kind of emotion that we have and the challenges that we have. And so now Job cannot tahan already. Cannot stand already. Say, God, I got to complain. And then we read on in verse 18. Why then did you bring me out of the womb? Sounds like Job is like Jeremiah, right? Or maybe Jeremiah read Job because Job is an older book. And it's saying the same thing. Why did you bring me out of my mother's womb? I wish I had died before my eyes saw me. If only I had never come into being or had been carried straight from the womb to the grave. Wow. Wow. Same thing. He says, I want to die. Or you let me live. This is terrible. That's not a way to live. Yet, at the end, we read that God blessed him because in spite of his complaint and authentic, authentic suffering that he cannot take and complain to God, it's okay. I think if we really suffer and we complain to God, it's okay. But the faith never left him. The complaint did not affect his faith. And at the end of the book, Job was restored. So a lot of things happen, both good and bad, in our lives. Sometimes they don't make sense. Like this is an unsolvable problem. Job never understood why he had to suffer so much. But the inkling we have is that it was God's plan for him to suffer. To prove to Satan that he's got people who will suffer and who will complain but will never lose their faith. I think that's the whole point. So in the same way, we don't know what God is doing in our life. But we need to wait. We need to be patient. Sometimes I'm asked, why do you think God allowed this to happen? Why hasn't God done something about it? Sometimes my answer is, I don't know. There are some things that are inexplicable from our perspective. This is where patience and faith comes in, and genuine faith comes in. As I get older, I think that I'm more certain about my faith, but I'm not often very sure about the consequences of my faith or the meaning of my faith. So, when are you going to be patient, and when are you to be patient? Let me repeat, when circumstances or prospects are uncontrollable, when people that you live with and you interact with are unbelieving, and when problems are unsolvable. Do you recognize any of these in your life right now? Maybe one, maybe all three. God says to you, let us be patient. God says to me, be patient. Be faithful to do what God wants us to do. And we don't need to roll over and die. We need to carry on. Trust God. So that we can grow while we are waiting. So James says in chapter 1, verse 2 to 4, consider it great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete and lack nothing. That's also the purpose for our suffering, endurance. And so we will finally be reminded as we get older, or all of you are getting older. All of you who are even young ones are getting older. Anyway, so I can say as we get older, we need to be reminded of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, which says, they who wait for the Lord, waiting is about patience. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. As you wait, please be patient, because like walking the 10,000 steps, you will be strengthened. You will grow in your health, spiritual health, and you know that the walking or the running will come to an end. And the reward will be for us when he comes again. Amen. Father, thank you for this privilege to share this word. And I pray that your people here at home watching or here in the church, that we will be encouraged by the fact and the knowledge that you are in full control, and you will bring all things to a perfect end, and we will find our joy. In Jesus' name. Thank you.